recording, and I'm Neil Gornflow. I am the network connector at the ABCD Institute. I'm just going to introduce the session here with Janine and the Greenlight, and talk a little bit about the real quick about the Institute, just a couple minutes. So welcome to an ABCD network Skillshare, the Greenlight method. This is an event of the ABCD Institute. Let me drop a link in here so you can fill out this form if you want to sign in and just answer our prompt. Put your name, where you're coming in from. And what is your favorite evaluation method? That's the prompt. The link is in the chat if you want to open up the file of this little slide deck that I'm going to go through. So while I'm just going through this, everyone can put their name, where you're joining from, and what your favorite evaluation method is. And then about the ABCD Institute. The Asset-Based Community Development Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit membership organization supporting ABCD practitioners worldwide. Asset-based community development is an approach working with and in communities that counteracts the prevailing focus on community needs and deficits. The community ABCD recognizes the inherent strengths found in every community, including volunteer groups, associations, and individuals. ABCD revitalizes local initiatives and recasts relationships between organizations, institutions, associations, and residents, helping them be built from the inside out, based on assets rather than the inside in, and are resilient in the face of the turbulence of our times. The ABCD Institute was founded in 1993 by John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann after publication of their influential book, Building Communities from the Inside Out, A Path to Finding and Mobilizing a Community's Assets. And the Institute has served as a global hub for ABCD practitioners worldwide for over 30 years. And what's new this year is that we've launched an international network that anyone can join online at abcd.org and become part of the community. And some of the benefits: direct connection to members across the globe through shared interests. You can join a community of practice, you can join work groups, there's resources you can get at, and lots of events and thought partnerships. So this is a place where ABCD practitioners can learn more and help each other develop their careers and their practice. And what's really cool about it is there are practitioners from all over the world in so many different contexts applying ABCD in some very unique ways. There's a lot of innovation going on around the world. And here are some of the upcoming events and opportunities. So we're on June 4th is our Offer a Needs Market, and then ABCD and the Solidarity Economy on June 10th, bringing people together in challenging times on June 11th. And then we have the big international gathering at the end of July. So people in person will be in Chicago, and then we'll have practitioners on Zoom. Please check it out at the link there, abcdinstitute.org/gathering. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Janine. I'll drop a link in about how to join and everything, so you can get started. And I'll stop sharing and turn this over to Janine.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And welcome.
Let me get my screen up and going. Oops, sorry, let me start at the very beginning, as Julie Andrews said. Right, so welcome to this presentation. It's a discussion, really, about linking ABCD and the Greenlight movement. And just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I was studying as a very young social work student back in the 80s, more or less at the same time as Jody Kretzmann and John McKnight were doing their neighborhood work in Chicago. And I've had the privilege, I would think, of living always in rural community settings. I was born on a mission station. I grew up on a theological campus in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. I went to a multiracial international school in Swaziland before 94. And then I was studying social work in Johannesburg at the University of Witwatersrand, and then got married and went back to Swaziland. And I was using the time to finish off my degree through correspondence. And I was working in a community of people who had been moved, they'd been relocated to make way for a sugar estate. And they were basically dumped, and there was no water, there was no infrastructure. They had come from a place where they had all of those things, and then they were just kind of dumped in this valley. So as part of my studies, I was working with the women to try and see if we could find ways of developing income generating projects. And I was very naive, 22 years old, young student, going to change the world. And so one of the ladies that I came across was this young lady called Simpiwe. And she was lucky enough to have a sewing machine, and she was a very skilled seamstress. And this dress, I still have it. It hangs up in my cupboard as a kind of memento of those days. And she would make these kinds of dresses. And I thought, wow, this woman is so talented. Let's find a way of helping her to develop the skill and turn it into an income generating project. And so without really thinking any further than that, I started encouraging her and got her to apply for a small business loan. We had funding for some business loans. And I said to her, why don't you start doing this income generating project? Which she did. She started sewing for her neighbors and sewing these types of dresses for events in the community and so on. But her husband was an alcoholic, and he was obviously a very frustrated man. He didn't have employment. Many of the men in that community had left. They would go to the nearby towns or even across the border into South Africa to look for work. So it was mostly women, children, and the elderly that I was working with. But he was at home, and he obviously saw her making some money and got frustrated and jealous. And what he would do when she'd sold some dresses or something and she came home with the money, he would hit her and beat her up and take the money and go and buy some more beer. And what ended up happening is she came to me and she said, look, I can't take this abuse anymore. He's messing up with my business plans. I need to leave the community. And one afternoon, I actually helped her. We snuck into the house while he was asleep, and we grabbed her stuff, and I drove her to the nearest town, and she set herself up there at a cousin's house and carried on with her sewing project there. But afterwards, when I've, 30, 35, nearly 40 years later, thinking back to how I handled that situation and how I was using, my limited skills in those days, I think if I was to do this again, I probably would do it quite differently. So what I didn't do is take time to find out from Simpiwe and from the community, what do you need? We need to, you don't know what you need until you know what you've got. And that's the basis of ABCD. You need to look at what's there before you can see where the gaps are and work out, what else is required. So before we move on to the Greenlight part of things, just to give you kind of an overview of the way that I look at ABCD, because I know you can see this whole picture much better if you go to the JEDA website there, the link is there. But different groups around the world look at ABCD slightly differently. We all have the basic assets that Jody and John came up with. But in South Africa, I focus on the 5 sustainable livelihoods assets: the human, social, natural, physical, and financial. But starting out, we always start with the stories, with the history, with the values, with the culture, getting people to talk and to just build relationships and using appreciative inquiry and different storytelling methods. finding out from the people, what are your customs, what are your beliefs, how does the community work? Like, how do you tick? Because you can't assume that every community is the same. It's made up of individual people who are unique, who have their own stories and ideas and values and so on. So for me, the critical starting point is that first asset of the stories and the values and the cultures, the customs. And then we do the sort of standard mapping tools for the others, the human assets, what individuals have, the social assets, which are all the connections, relationships, associations, and so on. Natural assets is what God has given us. Physical is infrastructure, and then the financial is all the economic cash and investments and income and that sort of a thing. So moving on to the Greenlight. And I'm delighted to have Tina Mason on this call because, as I said to her, she's going to answer all your difficult questions. I'll just do the easy ones because Tina represents the Greenlight office in Cape Town in South Africa. But going right back to the beginnings, this whole tool was developed in Brazil by Saude Criança, it's now called the Dara Institute. And they started out by looking for a family action plan, a way of assessing individual families to find out what their challenges were, what their needs were, what the issues were facing them. And they developed initially on paper a family action plan. This was then innovated by Fundación Paraguay, and they called it the Poverty Stoplight. And it still runs around the world as Poverty Stoplight since 2009. And then Taking Care of Business is an amazing South African organization, which brought it into South Africa in 2014. And they use it with the ladies that they are working with in their business, which originally started as the clothing bank, where they would get donated clothing from stores, where it's slightly damaged, and teach the ladies how to repair it and sell it on and make money that way. And they now call themselves Taking Care of Business because they've expanded to focus on more than just selling of clothing. And so Laura Berg, together with a few friends and now with Tina, have developed it and call it the Greenlight approach. So it is an approach which is used to measure aspects of multidimensional poverty and quality of life in the households of clients that we work with, and also the people with whom we work, like the employees and teachers and students and so on. It's multidimensional, it's a self-evaluation, and it's very visual. So people who are struggling with literacy, they can look at a picture and then they can discuss what the picture means to them. And it helps people to think about their situation in terms of any struggles they're having with socioeconomic issues and any of the other challenges. And it's a first step in helping them to develop a personalized strategy for them to look at how do I get to a better quality of life. Because sometimes people don't understand what the issues are that are making them struggle. And this is a very wide and very multidimensional assessment tool. And so it's both a methodology and a metric so that we can see where are people doing well, where are they struggling, and where are they really completely stuck? Because then we can help them to take action, to think about how they can address different situations. And why is it now freezing? Oops, sorry. Here we go. I'm going to show you the video now, which explains the Greenlight movement.
In a world where poverty is still a pervasive issue, two things have become clear. We need to put people at the center of their own development, and we need to explore creative and collaborative ways of working together to optimize impact. Social development is neither rational nor linear, so we have to find smart, innovative ways of listening and learning from the people we serve in our society. And if we work together, then we stand a chance of finding the sweet spot of maximum social impact. Greenlight is a social methodology and a set of metrics that activates people's awareness, encourages their agency, and motivates them to own their journeys to a better quality of life. Together with a well-thought-out technology platform, Greenlight helps organizations to listen to people in ways that were unimaginable before and to evidence their social impact. There are over 130 organizations based in South Africa and the Sub-Saharan Africa who are using the Greenlight approach to activate people and to assess the impact of their developmental programs. This is the Greenlight movement, and it has been in existence since 2015. We follow a people-first philosophy, and because we all use the same impact framework, we come together in forums, webinars, and conferences to have critical conversations about what is working and what is not. And our end game is helping people to help themselves from impoverishment and dependency to independence and dignity. It's the job of the Greenlight office to support the Greenlight movement in their efforts to measure, understand, evidence, and articulate their social impact. With metrics that measure multidimensional poverty, resilience in entrepreneurs and the self-employed, as well as the interwovenness of disability with poverty, the Greenlight office has over 40,000 assessments in the system, many of them forming longitudinal snapshots in time. And the outcome is a hub of credible, integrous data that exists in both granular and aggregated forms. And due to the capture of both quantitative and qualitative data, Greenlight members are able to use insight for better decision-making and evaluation of their programs. The result of combined data, stories, and case studies is that the Greenlight office has the knowledge to leverage discussions on a societal and policy level. And then there are the Greenlight facilitators, a vital part of the movement. They hold space for people to self-diagnose their situations and to tell their stories, never judging and never giving advice. They are the magic in the Greenlight process. These facilitators bear witness to the changes that people make in their lives. They bring back the data and the stories so that we can enhance our understanding and respond more appropriately with our programs. By bringing together a diverse range of organizations in the Greenlight movement, a sharing and supportive environment is created that allows organizations to see each other as collaborators and not competitors. Using the Greenlight data, we are identifying interesting trends and insights from various stages of programs, from baselines to 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months and further. We can now provide input on the main challenges to families across South Africa. What people change first when starting to earn income? What seems to be important to change first? What stays red, in other words stuck, and is hard to change? What people really need versus what they want? And then program design, what's working and what's not. Although many organizations currently have reasonable reporting and governance practices in place, we believe there is a need to go further, to look in the mirror and fully comprehend the impact we are making, to be agile and willing to redesign programs for greater impact. We need government agencies and the CSI sector to step up and support programs for 3 years and longer to ensure effective measurement and evidence of real impact. We need partners who have special products and knowledge to join the Greenlight ecosystem to enhance the reach of the Greenlight movement. Are you conscious of the challenges you face in finding better ways of helping people to help themselves? Connected to your communities and to the social economy? Courageous in your efforts to use data that can lead to real solutions that bring about lasting impact and change? We are, and it's moving the needle of transformation in Africa. We need everyone to be focusing on what's important and what works. We can only do this if we are talking to each other through a common language, the language of impact. It's time to be conscious, courageous, and connected. Welcome to the Greenlight movement.
So that's a wonderful summary from Laura. And the thing is that if we are to encourage people-centered development, then we should also be encouraging people-centered measurement. Because often the way that measurement is done is quite one-sided. So when you think about the way that measurement is done in a needs-based approach, we don't often see people as the main actors in eliminating challenges from their lives. We don't engage with individuals and households in any kind of self-diagnosis. And so then we just implement a program that we think they need. This is if you're using a needs-based approach. Evaluations and impact assessments are notoriously one-sided. They're seen through the eyes of the assessor. So it's a top-down view. It's not a bottom-up approach. And usually the aim of an assessment is to be objective and neutral about findings, and it doesn't really consider people's perceived reality, which is hugely subjective, but it's also valid, because obviously how a person sees their life is absolutely critical. And most assessments record results in the form of either quantitative, so it's just numbers or facts and statistics, or only qualitative with stories, but they seldom combine the two. And then lastly, most assessment methods leave people out of the entire process. It's something that happens to the people, but it doesn't happen with them. So the Greenlight is something different. The Greenlight, the office of the Greenlight is in Cape Town. It's a non-profit organization with public benefit registration. And it holds the space for the Greenlight movement, which is a collaboration of more than 140 non-profit and businesses in South Africa or Southern Africa, using the Greenlight methodology and metrics to evidence their social impact. And over the 8 years that it's been in existence, there are now over 75,000 assessments in the system. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of evidence of impact. And it's an enabler. It's a movement of organizations who recognize that if we are wanting to move this needle of transformation, we need to have smart, appropriate tools directed at measuring the important elements of social impact, which will actually tell us if people's lives are changing. And additionally, because it's a people-driven development, the people that we work with have to be engaged in that measurement of their own journeys in order to have a better quality of life. So there are now 6 different versions of the metric. The first one that was developed is the poverty metric, which is like the basic one. And then there's a resilience one, which is for people who've moved on a little bit but are still facing certain struggles. There's a disability one, which is for families that have a disabled member living with them. There's a teacher well-being and a tertiary student well-being version. And then there's one that looks at inclusion and diversity in schools. So the Greenlight office have really developed a wide range of tools based on the original one, but specific for certain sectors of society. So the different dimensions of poverty are income and employment, health and the environment, housing and infrastructure, education and culture, organization and participation, and self-awareness and motivation. So you can see it really covers all of life, basically. And over these different dimensions, there are, in the South African version, a total of 50 indicators which ask different questions around these dimensions. And each indicator has got 3 possible answers. The red answer would be where the family really feels like they're struggling, they are stuck. The yellow answer would be, we're trying, but it's not so easy. We're still struggling. And then the green answer would be, we're fine. We're doing well. We're building confidence, and we have dignity and independence for this indicator. So the family looks at each of those indicators. They discuss the 3 definitions, and they agree as a family, where do we feel we sit according to these different definitions. So here's an example. In the area of income and employment, indicator number 2 is about your sources of income. So the family would look at this and they would say, do we not have stable or reliable jobs? Does our income vary widely from month to month? And we depend on external grants or subsidies. If that is the case, then they would choose the red answer. If they say, well, we've got one or more economic activity that does provide some stable income, we may still depend on the grants and subsidies, and income may not be steady. Perhaps it's seasonal or it's a contract basis. So there is money coming in, but it's not fully stable. So that would then be the yellow answer. If they say, no, we've got one or more economic activity that is a stable income. Perhaps there's someone working, perhaps there's someone with regular contract work, and they do not depend on external grants or subsidies. Then they would choose the green answer. And the Sustainable Development Goals are fully represented in all of those indicators. So you can see the 7 SDGs in the middle, and then around the outside are all the different indicators of the Greenlight, which correspond to those different indicators, the different SDGs. So it really is, in the end game, is independence and dignity for the families concerned. When we think of it in terms of ABCD, I put the assets on the left-hand side. So if you look at the different sectors of the assets on the left and the poverty, the Greenlight poverty dimensions on the right-hand side, you can see that again, all of those 6 different dimensions are covered when we think about looking at ABCD assets. And what I liked when I came across ABCD, I was trained in 2012 by Coady Institute. They came to Johannesburg in partnership with a local university. I felt like this was the answer for ABCD because I didn't feel like there was a good evaluation system that we had been taught about. And when we saw, when I attended a Greenlight presentation way back in 2013, was it? I thought, this is it. This is the way that we can use, because when somebody shows that they are green, what they're saying is that this is my asset. This is something that I have that I can work on. So the surveys ideally are conducted in the home. There are times when you have to use a workplace, but we found that working in the home is preferable because, for one thing, many family members can sit together. And also there's a feeling of openness and safety in your own house. You're willing to talk about certain things. Oops, it jumped ahead. And the facilitator doesn't come in as a person who's going to say that answer is wrong. What you're doing is you're just giving a space to the family, you're guiding them and saying, you choose, you discuss it as a family, and let's put it on the scorecard. And they will come back with both the quantitative data, which is the survey information, as well as qualitative data where they find out from the family what's going on. And they are really the magic, as you saw in that video as well. The facilitators are the magic because they are the ones who will enable the family to feel safe, to feel able to share things. Sometimes they'll talk about domestic violence for the very first time in a Greenlight survey situation. So they are critical to the whole process. And then when the survey is done, the person has a scorecard which has all these different colored dots. And this is the summary of what they have been through. And it gives them a chance to reflect and to prioritize and plan how are they going to resolve some of the issues that affect the family. And it's critical that they keep a copy of the scorecard themselves. Whereas, when you normally do a survey, people will come in with a clipboard, write a whole lot of things, and then disappear. And the family's left, not knowing what's going on. And a lot of the time people will say, gosh, I didn't realize, I thought I was much more poor, or I didn't realize how I'm responsible for so much of what's happening in my life. So therefore I have that agency. I can change this. I can see where my assets are. I can see my greens where I'm strong, and then I can work on the things that might be a problem. So what happens is that you're giving a snapshot of the socioeconomic status of a family. And this is power for them. And it breaks down that feeling of just, I'm poor, because people realize they are doing well in certain areas. They might be poor economically or financially, but they are amazingly connected in their community. They're part of lots of different groups. They're doing well when it comes to organization and participation and so on. And that enables them to get unstuck from that feeling of just, I'm poor. And it creates the ownership and the responsibility for action. So it's not where you go in and survey a family and then say, I'll go away and think about a possible solution and I'll come back to you. What you're saying to the family is, here's a snapshot of your situation. You need to sit as a family and think about where would you like to improve, what things would you like to work on, and then together we can sit with you and other community members and you can come up with some kind of action plan to see how you would like to move forward. So there's, as you saw in that video, there's a self-diagnosis process. You then work on to the action plan. You experience that transformation because you then come back and do a repeat survey so that people can look back and see where they were at the beginning and now how they are 12 months later. And one of the most cool bits is the mapping, where you can see on a map. You'll see it just now. There's another picture. And so the whole system is digital. And so you can then download these amazing reports, which will show you a group of people and each of their individual results. And there's graphs which show you in terms of income and employment. This is the overall summary of the results from this particular group. And the Greenlight office will sit and have a chat with you about your results. So here are the kind of things that they can talk about. The top challenging indicators, these are where the families might be struggling. And you can see how from the baseline to the second time, there's been a lot of change where people have improved because they've been able to work on things for themselves over the maybe 10, 12 months between two surveys. You can also compare all the indicators from 1 all the way down to 50 and see again in terms of the baseline and the second surveys, where have things improved, where have people done better, and where have they moved towards the green. And then in terms of the qualitative data, it's very important to take the time to sit and find out from the family, how are things going, what's happening in their life. And here's an example of the notes that would be taken by the facilitator, and they will be stored together with the results, because it may not be you as a facilitator going back the second time to talk to a family. You need to look back and see what's happened in the past. So it's stories about this granny who's living here and she's struggling. She has a boy who's got amputated legs. She's been selling clothing and so on. And just over 2 years, 2-3 years, you can see how things have improved. And what I love is that she's even using her newfound financial knowledge and sharing it with somebody in her community and helping him to manage his finances. The taxi guy next door, helping him to sort out his finances. And then her grandson gets his Oscar legs, he gets prosthetic legs, and he's able to attend a better school and so on. So often for the families, there's so much change that happens beyond any kind of physical measurement, the quantitative. And it's now the Greenlight office has made an amazing digital platform. So you can use a smartphone. It used to be only on computers, but now you've got the app on your smartphone. It shows you your household location so that you can pull up a map. And if you've surveyed a particular area, you can see in one glance what people's answers are to specific indicators. There are different surveys that can be done. And there you get an indication of what the thing looks like on the actual phone. You can also look at this summary of the scorecard changes over the period for each of the indicators. And here's a map which shows where surveys have taken place across the country. And here's the cool thing, where if you've done a survey in a particular area, so the top picture shows you can see the indicator on the left highlighted is access to drinking water. So you can see that most of the families that have been visited, each of those little dots is a homestead that's been visited. And most of the people said, we're fine. Our water is clean, it's available, it's tapped, we haven't got a problem with accessing drinking water. But the same area down further on the family savings indicator, lots of reds and yellows and only a few greens. So this is an amazing way if you are needing to go to a funder, for instance, and say, we don't need money for boreholes because look, the families are all fine, they've got drinking water, but they are struggling when it comes to family savings. Could we use the funding for starting savings clubs or for running financial literacy programs? You can literally show the funder. And I think for organizations that are dependent on funding and reporting, this is a very fantastic tool, because funders like to see see things in pictures. And we have regular meetings. So these are members of the Greenlight movement. Each of these people represents a different organization. And it's wonderful to come together and to share resources, share challenges, share stories, so that we can create like referral pathways where you can say, well, I don't know the first thing about boreholes. And someone else can say, well, we've just done a big project. Here's the people to talk to. Here's a phone number, and so on. And so that helps with creating these referral networks, so that we're not on our own when it comes to dealing with challenges that we're not familiar with. And the big news is that Greenlight is now moving further into the continent. So you can see in South Africa, we have the 50 indicators, and we've got the survey tool is now available in 10 different languages. It's also being done in Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and Uganda. And you'll see some of them have different numbers of indicators, because each country needs to decide what indicator is relevant for my country. So in South Africa, we have a specific question about social grants, whereas the rest of Africa don't do social grants. So they wouldn't have that question, but they might have a few others. And so what we've been finding, what Laura and her team have been finding over the last 8 years, is that these are the kind of key challenges that people are facing across the country. These are the kind of things that often will come up. And some of them are linked, where people feel like, I don't have much of an entrepreneurial spirit or motivation. Perhaps I feel like I need to get a job. I've never felt like I could think about how to hustle, how to get some kind of business going, do something to make some money. And that is linked to your knowledge and skills to generate income. So obviously, if you can work on enabling people to generate knowledge and skills, that will help them to have a better capacity to plan and budget, and will also help them to build up an entrepreneurial spirit. So several of the indicators are interlinked. And if you can work on one, it can often then have a positive effect on several others. And we found that there are 3 main elements that come out during this whole process: the economic development, helping people to build up financial skills; personal development, building personal skills, life skills, knowledge, personal goals, those types of things. And then a big issue, the biggest one, is the whole issue around healing. Trust, social contact in the community, past traumas. And we found that if there's no work being done on the trust and the healing part of it, a lot of the other indicators will stay stuck. And as Laura says, the delicious insight from the ground is that 84% of all participants who've completed a poverty survey baseline and then a 12-month follow-up have improved their scores. So it really is something that, just in the process of thinking things through, I remember from times when I've done surveys, you sit with a family, and by the end of it, you say, how was that experience? And they just go, wow, I've never thought of some of these things before. I never realized that such and such was important. And I think it's so much more than just a survey. It's an experience for the people who are going through it. And here you can see the validation of the theory of change from baseline, the reds, the yellows, and the greens, up to after 36 months, where people are basically, there's no more reds, hardly any yellows, and they're much more green. So here are Laura's contact details, and we will share these slides so that you can have them. And as I say, they're based in Cape Town, so they can help people who are interested in doing this on the African continent. And then just before we close, and I share some of the other contact details for you, if I think back to Simpiwe and her beautiful dressmaking project, I wonder what might have been different if I'd been able to use the Greenlight tool with her family way back in 1986. Perhaps other households, if I had done the survey in the whole area, would have also shown red answers to that domestic violence indicator. And then we could have maybe come up with some kind of a program that we could have co-designed to deal with issues between marriage partners. Perhaps her partner might have sat in, he might have been in a not too drunken state to sit in and be part of the survey. And then he might have realized the error of his abusive behavior, because that has happened. And then perhaps he would have become a key positive male role model in the community for some of the younger men. Maybe she could have stayed in the community and started a sewing business, which would have benefited other women like herself. And obviously, nearly 40 years later, there's no point in saying what if, but I just wonder, and that's when I saw the Greenlight, I thought to myself, this really is a tool that is very, very relevant and useful for when you're working in communities using the ABCD approach. So thank you very much. And I'll just quickly, there are my details. And if you are based in the UK, they use a similar thing, but they call it Signal. So there's an organization called Signal and Transmit Enterprise based near Newcastle, Andy and Robert. And then Poverty Stoplight is the original one from Paraguay. And if you're in any other country, you can contact the Poverty Stoplight office in Paraguay. So yeah, as I say, we'll share all these slides and I will stop sharing and take any questions. Tina, would you like to add anything or share anything from the Greenlight office perspective?
No, I'm giving you a round of applause. Well done.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take any questions, any more specific questions. You've covered it beautifully.
Janine, could I
Yes.
just ask, with the Project Greenlight, with the teacher surveys and that process, has that started to roll out in South Africa already?
On the
Tina?
teacher
Yes,
surveys?
I think it has, yeah.
Yes. So teacher wellbeing is rolling out, and we're rolling that out into Africa at the moment. But yes, it's ready and available in South Africa. That's teacher wellness. We have tertiary student wellbeing as well, which we've put together for the university environment. So our two kind of survey areas are in the development space with poverty, resilience, disability, and then into the education space with teacher wellbeing, tertiary student wellbeing, and diversity and inclusion. But yes, you can definitely reach out to, in fact, I'll give you my number as well on the chat section. And so please just, where is chat here? There we go. Chat. Let me pop that
Thanks,
in here.
Tina.
Thanks. Thank you, Tina.
Scott, you've got a hand up, and then Pam.
Yeah, thank you. The question I've got on this, thank you for the good presentation. It's very clear and very much appreciated. This is the first time that I've ever really kind of worked with or kind of interacted with your organization. And my question on this is, what is the scope worldwide? Because you'd mentioned that a lot of these metrics are being used in, Southern Africa. I assume starting with South Africa and probably advancing into other areas. But yet my question on this is the basis for this entirely African, or was it sort of worldwide and then it's adapted to each of the areas? That's sort of part A of the question. And part B of the question is, if it is in other areas of the world, what areas do you find it most useful?
Yeah, as I said in that earlier slide, it was actually originally developed in Brazil by that organization that used it as a family action plan. And then Fundación Paraguay developed it as well further because they were working with economic groups of women who were doing economic development. And then since then, Fundación Paraguay has spread it across the world. But the idea is that if you want to bring it into your own country, you need to adapt it and make it relevant for your own context. And so that's why when it came to South Africa, Laura and her team pulled it together and changed some of the indicators to make it specifically South African. And then since then as well, now that they've been doing the other countries in South Africa, in Africa, again, slightly adjusting it for each of those African countries. But it's a global movement. Tina.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. That's a good question, Scott, and thank you, Janine. That's the correct answer. Essentially, it's a socioeconomic self-assessment. So one country is going to be different to another. So what we've done is, what you want to do is you want to be always comparing apples with apples. So you want to say what in this particular context. So there's a certain amount of research that goes into putting a quality survey together for a specific country. So for instance, Australia is going to be exceptionally different to India, going to be exceptionally different to South Africa. But you want to make sure that you have got a robust enough survey base that is looking at as many dimensions as possible. And because the tool uses imagery and color and activity with the hand, you wanted to make sure that it speaks to relevance in terms of a country. So for instance, between Uganda and South Africa, the socioeconomic circumstances, although sometimes the images may look the same, are radically different. So, so there's a certain amount of sensitivity around that. And you want to also be asking questions that make it safe for people to answer, that are not going to trigger a response or a transference. So, but yes, and then mostly what you want to be doing is measuring apples for apples, so that you're getting a consistent amount of information across the board. Scott, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I used to do quite a bit of market research measurement. It's more of a claim on that. And I was just trying to kind of figure out what the scope of this was, because, you know, a lot of times they have like these measurements for one country, and then somebody tries to come up with something which is around the world, but then all of a sudden they say, well, gee, can't quite do it the same way in each country. And I was trying to figure out kind of what commonalities worked universally and what didn't. So thank you for the answer on that.
Sure.
And sorry, Scott, on that point. So this tool, so if you think about a sort of globally accessing information, this tool can form part of that. But the most important thing here is that the tool has the capacity to activate the agency of the family that is being surveyed because of the methodology. And then you have a spiraling up impact there, where actually done correctly and intentionally and in a planned and methodical and rhythmical purpose with an eye to longitudinal data, it will have the same impact on the organization. So it has the power to activate the organization as well as the family, because you are making data-based, data-informed decisions around very critical resources, and now being able to see if the dial moves. And that for me is what is truly exciting about this, because you know, we've got 90,000 surveys in our platform now, and that will probably grow by another 10,000-20,000 in the next year and a half. But the number is, to my mind, is important. It's good to have that volume of data, but what's really important is to be able to see that data where at the individual level, so that dependency is reduced. So the whole thing here is about how do you reduce dependency and activate agencies, so that when you move away from the developmental space, people are able to stand on their own 2 feet.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's really that's the magic work we do. Actually, yeah, I have the best job in the world, I think.
Pam, did you have a question? And then Gail.
Well, I'm absolutely fascinated. Janine, I think it was just so good to listen to this presentation. You've spoken about it a bit in our conversations, but that presentation is really great. And I'm a disability activist, and I am very interested in whether it would be possible for somebody to do this type of presentation at the Rural Health Conference, which is in September in Pietermaritzburg at the Ascot Inn, because a lot of, well, it's not just about disability, it's about rural health. And these are practitioners that come from all over South Africa to share. And I'm really keen to know if it would be possible maybe to do an oral presentation as well as a workshop, because this is exactly what the rural health movement is all about. It's about the agency of the end users from all aspects. So can you, I'll put you in touch with the rural health 25 conveners, and I would love to see you there. Someone.
That would be excellent. Yeah, I'm sure between us, Tina and I can make a plan.
Good. Wonderful.
Excellent. Thanks, Pam. Gail.
Pam,
and then-
I've put a note in the chat for you.
Right. Excellent. Yes. I do know Shona. Thank you. Yes, she's great.
Gail, unmute first.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, great. Thanks so
Gail.
much, Janine. Thanks for the platform. Thanks for the presentation. So Tina, I've heard, I think I've sat in on some conference in Cape Town, really enjoyed it. Also heard of it years ago when I was still with government. So I firmly believe it is something that must precede most programs. So
Yes.
I operate in the Cape Town, or more the Cape Winelands area within the Western Cape, and I'd love to have a chat to hear, you know, where is it happening at the moment, or how could I maybe refer the organizations that I'm working with to also just get in touch with you, because I truly believe in this as an added tool, the assessment, which is so necessary to precede, and in a way it ensures the outcome, you know, or let's say the long-term impact.
Exactly.
So I think in this world of data-driven, everybody talks about impact-driven, how much more that we must insist and influence those, and I'm talking government here, to make sure that this really finds that important space. So thank you, and I'll definitely be in touch with you.
Gail, thank you very much. And sorry, Janine, I'm just jumping in here, but I've had strategic conversations with the Treasury Job Fund, and they really do buy into, you know, this thing of getting organizations to do a baseline. And sometimes the language is a bit overwhelming. You know, if you fall into the development space like I did, really, I didn't know what a theory of change was. Some person had to come along to the idiot sitting here and say, it's actually your marketing plan in the development space. It's your commercial plan. It's what your bottom line is. And I can see Nonka's hands is up. But we are talking with them, because there are things that government specifically needs to wrestle with. To land, so that they can and adopt an impact-driven methodology, so that you are spending your money and your resources and your time and your energy effectively. Janine Nonka is there. Gail, please reach out to me. My details are there.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. That was very informative. I have two questions. The one is, you said that this can be adapted to be country specific, and I was wondering if it can be adapted to be project specific, so that if we have a specific project and we need to ask certain questions, if that would be possible. And the second question is, in the areas that we work, we are usually we make use of local people as enumerators. Is it possible to train them in doing these surveys? And if so, what level of debriefment is possible for them? Because I can imagine that some of the responses, especially around GBV, etc., might be quite dramatic for a enumerator.
Yeah, no, definitely. Laura and her team and Tina, they are able to create indicators and stuff, a survey for you specific to your project needs, not only like a country thing. And then also on the issue of the facilitators, I know I was chatting to someone the other day who works with youth groups, and she was saying it would be so wonderful because you've got all these youngsters who are out of work, who are out of school, and it would be wonderful to be able to use them. And the challenge is that you've got to have facilitators. That's the biggest issue with the Greenlight, is a facilitator who can hold a space with the family, deal with, like you say, some of those critical questions, because you may have, you know, the abusive husband in the room, and then you get to question number 49 and he wants to come and hit you over the head with your cell phone. So, you know, you've got to have facilitators who can hold that space. So ideally, you know, there are certain criteria. It doesn't have to be a social worker or a psychologist or a teacher or something like that, but it's somebody who's got a fair amount of maturity and experience in holding community groups together, because it can be, as you say, traumatic, where you come across suddenly the person bursts into tears and is telling you some awful thing that their family is facing for the first time. You need to know how to handle that. So there are specific criteria in a way, and Laura and Tina would show you how to select your facilitators. If you're using your own team members, you'd need to be able to have them trained and you know, select them carefully. If you don't have, there are also facilitators, Greenlight facilitators, that can work independently. So you could say to Tina, we're working in Lusikisiki, do you have any Greenlight facilitators in that? Then you could contract them in, they will come and run the surveys for you. And sometimes that is a better way, because community members might be hesitant to share personal information and private family information with someone who comes from the same community, because how do I know you're not going to go and share this information at church on Sunday? You know? So sometimes having external facilitators to come in, do surveys in a community and then leave again is a better way of doing it. But all of that would be discussed with Tina and Laura and the team if you are to sign up and go through that process.
Thank you, Nonka. Just on that, we have a criteria of what we call fit for purpose. What is an organization that is really going to, because everything around this work is typically heavy lifting of sorts. This is not selling microwaves or kettles, you know. So we look for fit for purpose members who can partner with us. And there we're looking for organizations where leadership is involved, and they are curious, and they have a psychology and a mentality around wanting to shift to impact. They understand the value of becoming an impact-driven, data-driven organization, number one. Number two, they're also looking for longevity. And we have built a member journey where we've learned, we've looked at organizations that have been successful, where they've used our surveys, and we've seen people who are successful and we've seen people who are not. And the organizations that are successful are organizations that have a fairly focused, narrow focus, i.e. they don't try and do everything, and they have a pretty intentional, methodical, rhythmical way of engaging over a period of time with their project participants, the people who are in there. And this applies to both employees in commercial space and in the development space. And what Greenlight does is we mimic that. We believe that that's the way behavior changes. Behavior doesn't change overnight. We believe that it is an intentional, step-by-step process, and we work with our members in that way. So we embody the DNA that we think is most effective. So we work hand in hand with our members very specifically to make sure that by the time that first baseline survey is done, everything is organized, participants are feeling safe, survey, everybody is set up. And then we continue to work with our members closely for the second survey so that an impact report can get pulled in. And ideally, we say 90 days from the time we start a robust conversation about Greenlight. 90 days is really, you should have your first baseline report within 90 days, all things being equal. And we're not undertaking 2,000 national surveys. But all things being equal, your first baseline should be within 90 days. And within 9 months, you should get to your second, 12 months, you should get to your first impact report. And there are a whole lot of other benefits. The report is tailored so that you can use it to raise funds. I'm an the Greenlight customer, which is how I got to Greenlight through a project that I ran in the informal sector or the primary market. I can't call it the township economy anymore, so I just call it the primary market and irritate people. So, but we ran 3,000 spaza shops, and we worked methodically with those 3,000 spaza shops. And so we bring a lot of that experience, operational experience, into this kind of robust academic environment as well, which is a healthy balance as well. And then asking our members to think about how do they move data and insight and learning and research from paper into planned execution, so that we don't just know it, we actually physically do it, because it's in the doing that everything is learned. Everything is learned in the doing. And so that's a bit of our values and background of our values. And of course, this is a beautiful mimic with ABCD, because ABCD is about the doing as well. Yeah,
exactly. I was just going to say what I love in a community is we normally start with a Greenlight survey first, and then we can do some ABCD work and get people to start looking and unpacking their assets and thinking about what do we have and so on. And then we sit with the action plan part of it and say, now you look at your scorecard and you see that there's a whole lot of you that feel like you do better off if you could do some kind of income generating project. You guys sit together and look at what you've come up with as your assets in the community. How can you use those available assets and come up with some kind of a income generating project together? Another group of you might say, no, our issue is we're going mad with our teenage children. They're driving us crazy and there's lots of conflict in the family. You guys sit together and discuss and come up with an idea of what could we do using the assets that we've identified, come up with some kind of parenting workshops or, relationship building, conflict resolution. And that's a beautiful way in which the two things combine, because although Greenlight is a family-based thing, families make up the community. So, it just goes together, and people individually can then use their own scorecard and see how they grow and how they develop, but look at all the assets that are available within the broader community. Scott, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I'm just curious on this because it sounds like a really powerful tool for evaluation of the social advancement effort. Has this tool ever been used for monetary reward purposes, such as a company that's providing some sort of a social service, and then if they do really well on this, they get an extra bonus or something like that because they've been especially effective in that way? Have you ever used it for that type of use?
I haven't personally, no. I don't. No.
So Scott, certainly within the South African context, so it may be different elsewhere, we are very clear to make it clear that in fact there is no monetary benefit, there is no advantage to, in other words, this hasn't been used as part of a bonus or a performance or a reward system. However, based on the information, and certainly from my previous life, in my previous work where I was working with the spaza shops, the tool helped us understand that it's also not fair to ask people to change behavior if there isn't a reward for changing behavior. And so we had to then say, once people's agency is activated, we had a responsibility as an organization to then say, we've got a social compact here where you have shave, shower, and show up. That's our kind of thing, shave, shower, and show up. We'll meet you here. Behavior changed. And then we realized, because we could see that their behavior changed now, that people then warranted something as a result of that. And in that context, we put a loan business together and actually provided access to capital. So in a way, the information gave us the tools to say the behavior has changed and therefore we can make this decision about providing access to capital, which is typically considered to be a risky thing in unsecured lending. So the information, to my mind, what is beautiful and the most important thing is that it helps organizations self-solve. So there's no handbook for what we're trying to do in the world right now. We all hope that we're going to get a handbook. There isn't. if we can go back to data and it's not just numerical data, but it's quantitative data, and we can sanity check that, check in, it helps organizations self-solve. And it's also for organizations to gain that confidence and grit that they can self-solve. That this massive upwell that we have in our human condition to actually make a difference can now be validated. We can actually go back to the hard data. It's like, you want to lose weight, you get on the scale. Otherwise, there's nothing's going to work if you don't get on the scale. Then you've got to get on the scale again, and in between, if the behavior hasn't changed, the dial's not going to move. So yeah, that's I'm short of time, Janine.
Thanks,
So
thanks,
I'm
Tina.
going
No,
to
that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Please reach out to me or Janine. It was just a delight being here, and thank you everyone for time.
Wonderful. No, we'll definitely take conversations forward. Thank you.
Janine, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? I will put the slides onto a Google Drive and then send the link through to Neil, and then he'll be able to, because he's got all of your email addresses, so he'll be able to email you the link.
That is if you gave your email address in your registration.
Yes.
Then I can do it. But I put my email in the chat too. So if you want the deck or more information about membership, yeah, just drop me a line, neal@abcdinstitute.org. Anything else, Janine?
If any of you are not yet members of the ABCD Institute, do join, because as you can see, there's lots of interesting sessions taking place, and maybe you have a topic that you'd like to share. Neil is very open to, I mean, we just had a chat online some few months ago, and then he came back to me and said, hey, you mentioned this Greenlight thing. Would you like to talk about it? So, any ideas and things that you have as a member of the Institute, this is the forum for you to be able to share. And there's even an online forum where you can throw in a question and say, hey guys, I need to know a little bit about this. Does anyone have any ideas? And you get feedback. It's really nice, a wonderful international network that Neil is building.
Yeah, helping the Institute build, yes.
Helping the Institute, yes, not single-handedly.
It's a team effort.
Always teamwork.
But I'm part of it.
Yeah.
Anything else, Janine?
Not from my side, thanks, Harley. I don't know whether the Greenlight is active in Australia, but I'm sure you could find out.
No, look, I don't believe so, but probably very, very useful around work with Indigenous communities, but also some work I'm doing with youth justice down in Tasmania with Fiona Miller. And yeah, I'm just, as I was listening to you talk, I was just blowing my mind seeing what we could actually do with this and how we could integrate something like that into our programs. So thank you.
Fantastic. Wonderful.
Yeah, any last questions before we conclude?
Nice to see you, Noltanhla.
Yes, yeah. So I have joined late, and then I've got the issue of a network, but
no problem.
it was a good presentation, greeting to everyone. I'm
Thank
Noltanhla,
you.
a community facilitator from the station. Yes, yes. Thank you.
I really think that Asivikelani could use the Greenlight in an amazingly powerful way. She works with a fantastic organization that works in communities, helping people sort out water supplies and electricity issues and cleaning campaigns. And she was a student at the university when I was doing some lecturing there, and she's brilliant at her work. And I think Asivikelani would really benefit from thinking about the Greenlight tool for working in the communities.
Yes, true. It's a very interesting tool. Exactly. So, as I said, I have joined late, but I have followed the engagement. And then what I like the most is the fact that after the survey, even a member of a community can also have it just to reflect, it's also good for a
Yes.
person to make his own follow up, that
Yeah.
whether it's improving and also, yeah. So it's a very interesting thing. You know, most of the survey people, they just come, as you said, with a clipboard, and then they ask
Yeah.
questions, they ask, and then on, no reports,
Mm.
no what, and then you don't know what is it. So it's very interesting tool. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely reach out to you and Shumani. I'll send an email and we can discuss this some more. Wonderful. Well, if there are no more questions, I don't want to keep everybody from their evening dinner or Harley from his late night bed. His dogs need him to go to bed. So thanks everybody. And thank you to Neil for creating this platform and this space. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Really rich discussion. Thank you, Janine. That was amazing. Thanks everyone for coming and asking questions and being curious. Yeah, and check out our other
Thank you very
events.
much.
See you again. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Craig.
you.
Thanks,
Go well.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nilka.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Bye.